Okay, so for today's video, we are going to be doing another fake crystal video. These have been really popular on my channel, and I have 3 new crystals that I want to share with you guys today. So I'm going to be discussing Obsidian, Rhodochrosite, and Selenite. Selenite, I know, right? So if you want to learn about these 3 crystals, stay tuned and let's get on into the video. Okay guys, so sorry if the lighting is changing. It is very cloudy and it's getting very bright and very dark. But like I said, today we are going to be discussing 3 crystals that are being really commonly faked right now that I wanted to get in front of you guys so you are aware to avoid these crystals or just know a little bit more about what you are buying to make sure that you are not accidentally buying fakes. This is a series on my channel and I will leave a link up in the eye above if you want to check out the other parts of this series to find out about other fake crystals that are happening out in the market. And before we get into today's video, I will leave timestamps down below, so if you want to skip ahead to a certain crystal, by all means feel free. They will be linked so you can skip to the crystal that you are most interested in, or feel free to watch all the way through to learn about crystals that you may not know that are being faked. So our first crystal that we are going to be discussing today is black obsidian. So fun fact, black obsidian is not actually a crystal, but it is a glass, but it still belongs in the crystal family because of its metaphysical properties. A lot of people use black obsidian for protection, and obsidian and black onyx are often confused or sold as each other, and it's really hard to kind of see the differences between black onyx and obsidian. So it's more common that the jewelry pieces are using fake stones versus the big crystals that you guys are buying. So fake obsidian is often just black colored glass or resin. The best way to tell by this is really the weight. If your black obsidian feels really lightweight, it most likely is a fake, just because crystals tend to be extremely heavy. So this is a dead giveaway if your crystal is really light. So obsidian can take many forms. It can come in snowflake obsidian, rainbow obsidian, mahogany obsidian, sheen obsidian, which can be gold, silver, green, or even blue. Now, because obsidian is glass, unfortunately, it's really easy to fake with man-made glass, because the man-made glass feels very similar to the volcanic glass that forms obsidian. They are very similar in chemical makeup and appearance. Now, there's a lot of colored glass out there being sold for obsidian. I will show some pictures of what this colored glass looks like, but to me it looks nothing like obsidian. It's greens and purples and blues, and it really does truly look like glass. So I think most people who are familiar with crystals know that this isn't obsidian, but just in case you don't, if you see any crystals that look like this that are just colored glass, this is not obsidian. It truly is just colored glass. Obsidian doesn't typically come in a lot of colors outside of black and the mahogany color. Obsidian should have some natural bubbles in it because of the way that the crystal is formed, because it is glass. So that's a difference from clear quartz. When you see clear quartz have bubbles, that's usually a bad sign, but with obsidian you want to see some of those bubbles, just imperfections in color, inclusions. All in all, spotting fake obsidian is truly super hard, just because both man-made glass and volcanic glass that forms obsidian is pretty much the same. So I'd highly recommend, if you're going to be buying obsidian, to truly buy from a reputable seller and be extra careful when buying jewelry pieces, because that's most likely where it's being faked. So the next crystal we are going to be discussing is Rhodochrosite. If you guys don't know, Rhodochrosite is one of my absolute favorite stones, and I'm really sad to see that this is being faked, unfortunately. And it's not just being faked by foreign sellers, it's actually being faked by American sellers as well. I did a quick search on Etsy and found a lot of incorrect listings, so this is definitely popping up. So I wanted to bring this to you guys ASAP so you avoid buying something that isn't Rhodochrosite, because Rhodochrosite is super rare and super expensive, and I'd hate for you guys to end up buying something else that's a lot cheaper in place of Rhodochrosite. So Rhodochrosite isn't actually being faked, but it's really being misrepresented and being sold as other stones. So the 2 common stones that it is being misrepresented for are rhodonite and porkstone, also known as rainbow dolly jasper, also known as tri-banded calcite. So there are some key things you want to look for with real rhodochrosite, and I'm going to talk about what those characteristics are so you can make sure that you're not accidentally buying rhodonite or porkstone. So the first thing you're going to actually look for is this bacon-like pattern pattern. Rhodochrosite tends to actually look like bacon just because of its light pink and white patterning. Another thing to look for when you're looking for authentic rhodochrosite is all of the layers. There are tons and tons of lines of banding, and these lines are kind of wavy, and that kind of gives it that bacon-like effect. But there are layers and layers and layers of this banding, which you will not for sure find in rhodonite or porkstone. So make sure you are looking for those multiple layers of banding. And from a color perspective, rhodochrosite is mostly white and pink, whereas rhodonite is mostly pink and black. And the other thing to look for when you're looking at genuine rhodochrosite is that the pattern is super complicated. There are orbs, there are all kinds of lines, and I'll show you a picture right now just so you can see how complicated the patterns get for rhodochrosite. Neither rhodonite or porkstone have these complicated patterns. So let's quick talk about rhodonite, which is another pink crystal, but rhodonite is a super common stone. It is definitely nowhere near as rare as rhodochrosite is. So rhodonite definitely doesn't have any orb formations. It doesn't really have a lot of layers or patterns either. Rhodonite is really just a pink stone with various shades of pink and often has black. So you can see rhodonite with kind of more blotchy black spots, or rhodonite with the black veins. Those are the two kind of different types of rhodonite, which is totally different from rhodochrosite. So I actually have a piece of rhodonite and rhodochrosite that I'm going to show you side by side. I'm also going to be showing you pictures of the two, but I have two pieces that I want to compare just so you guys can see in person what these stones look like and how different they truly are. Okay guys, so on the left is the rhodochrosite and on the right is this top polished rhodonite. You can see that they are extremely different, but they are being sold as each other. And this rhodochrosite here on the left is a AAA grade rhodochrosite, so this one is very, very detailed, but you can get lower grade rhodochrosite, which kind of ends up looking like rhodonite. So just to see the difference in person, I think these stones are very, very different. And the next stone that is being faked with rhodochrosite is porkstone, which is also known as rainbow dolly jasper, and it's also known as tri-banded calcite. So I don't know if it's being faked just because the name is porkstone and it kind of looks like pork, and rhodochrosite kind of looks like bacon. So I don't know if there's just a name discrepancy in the translations when foreign sellers are selling porkstone versus rhodochrosite, but I've seen some American sellers try to sell this too, so I know that in fact is not a language barrier. But to me, there are some very, very obvious differences between rhodochrosite and porkstone. So I'm going to walk you through what those differences are so you guys can really see what the main differences are. So porkstone often has linear banding and it almost looks like tie-dye. Now I've seen it with many different types of banding, but mostly the lines are kind of going up and down or all the way around. They're not really going in kind of a squiggle formation, which is what rhodochrosite is known for with the banding. It's much squigglier, and porkstone, it's much more linear. Also, porkstone will probably never have orbs. It just doesn't form like that because it's a calcite. It doesn't form that orb-like pattern, whereas rhodochrosite often does have some type of orb in it. So that's another key thing to look for, is really look at the pattern. Another key thing to look at is the color. Porkstone often has brown, red, yellow, lots of white. It is very colorful, whereas rhodochrosite is mainly pale pinks, juicy pinks, and white, but not a ton of white. I'd say it's mostly a pink crystal. It can have some yellow on it, but I would say it's majority pink, whereas porkstone is majority white. I'm just going to show you an example of rainbow dolly jasper in person compared to the rhodochrosite piece that I have, just so you can see how different the pattern is. And I picked a porkstone with a ton of pattern to kind of show you how different the pattern is and the color. Okay, so on the left again we have the rhodochrosite, and on the right is this rainbow dolly jasper. So you can see the color is very, very, very different. The rhodochrosite is more of that pale pink or gemmy pink, and the porkstone here is very, very brown and almost orangey colored. You can see just in color and pattern that these are very, very different. And here is another example of rainbow dolly jasper, and you can see this one has a lot of white in it, and I'll show you this up close. So here's what it looks like up close, and you can see why they call it porkstone, because it kind of has that pork-like coloring, I suppose. But you can see how much white is in here, and then you see all this linear banding, it's just going this way. So very, very different in my opinion from the Rhodochrosite that has a much pinker color. Okay guys, so that is pretty much it for the Rhodochrosite. I think after seeing all these images, you'll be an expert on spotting genuine Rhodochrosite and not get suckered into buying rhodonite or porkstone. And the last crystal that we are going to be talking about is selenite. Now you guys may be thinking, selenite? Selenite's fake, or how is it being faked? I had the same questions, and after doing some research, there's definitely some clarity that needs to be clarified about selenite. So let's jump in. So I truly first found out about this when my supplier showed me a piece of selenite, and I looked at it and I was like, this doesn't look like selenite. And he's like, yeah, this is actual selenite. And I was like, this looks completely different. So I started doing some research. So most of the selenite that we are familiar with on the market is a form of gypsum, and the selenite you all know and love is a form of gypsum as well, but it is actually satin spar. It's not really selenite. So like I said, both genuine selenite and satin spar are part of the gypsum family. They're formed very similarly, but they have very, very different appearances, and I will show you what I mean. So when you think of selenite, you think of that kind of velvety texture, that iridescent shine, that super reflective flash. It has a very satin-like texture, which is why it's called satin spar, because it's very similar to the satin fabric. So selenite and satin spar are formed in a very, very similar way, and often are found even forming together. That's how similar they are. And satin spar has been sold as genuine selenite for years, and I've seen the selenite sold for as long as I remember. I've actually never really seen a piece of genuine selenite in a store, online, or really anywhere. And if you guys are familiar with desert rose, that is also a form of gypsum. But what happens to form the desert rose is when sand gets involved in the formation process, that's when it turns into desert rose. So that's technically a form of selenite, because selenite is an umbrella term for gypsum, true selenite, satin spar, and desert rose. So now I bet you're all wondering, what does genuine selenite look like? It actually looks very much like glass. It is crystal clear. It almost looks like ice on top of a lake. That's the best way I can describe it. It is very, very clear and not opaque, unlike its other form of satin spar. And genuine selenite actually grows in sheets. So a lot of the times when you see genuine selenite, it'll look like a giant piece of glass, or to me it looks like ice. So genuine selenite is much harder to come across and much more expensive. So I think a lot of people have been selling the satin spar as selenite because the properties are so similar. And guys, don't feel bad. I did not know this for the longest time. I think a lot of people don't know this. I know going forward, if I sell selenite in my shop, I will list it as selenite or satin spar, just because I think the more you know, the better. Satin spar is still a genuine crystal and still can be used for healing benefits. So don't feel bad if you have a ton of selenite, which is actually satin spar. Okay guys, so that is it for this week's crystal video. Tell me in the comment section down below which one shocked you the most. And if you guys have suggestions on future crystals that I should include in this video series, leave it in the comment section down below and I will do my best to make a video on it. So thank you guys again so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below for more crystal content, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye! And before I go, a special thank you to all of my patrons. If you are interested in joining my Patreon, I will leave a link in the description box down below. This Patreon is a great way to support my channel, and if you're looking for additional business advice, I offer this as well. So I look forward to seeing you on my Patreon. Closed doors, I'm a fool for your love.